Chapter 1: The Warning Signs. The first time I flagged it, I still believed they'd care. It was a Thursday, one of those gray, sleepy ones where the office lights feel too bright and the Slack pings never stop. I was 2 hours into combing through test logs when I saw the same anomaly for the third time that week. A silent fail. No error. No alert. Just skipped. It was small, a permissions bypass on the admin panel of our new internal client dashboard. But it was real. And if someone found it before we fixed it, they could walk through the front door of our system wearing an invisible badge. I took a screenshot. Tagged it in Jira. Wrote a clean, concise note. Potential security gap. Admin override triggers inconsistently under load. Escalating for review. I even messaged Liam directly, our team lead. His reply? Probably just a sync delay. Can you repro it 3 more times before we log it? I already had. But sure. I ran it again. 3 more times. Same result. He shrugged it off again. Said it was probably environmental. Asked if I could circle back on it next sprint. I didn't respond. That night, I lay in bed replaying the moment, how he didn't even look up from his laptop when I walked over to show him the logs. How his tone didn't change. How none of them ever really listened unless someone bled. But I kept the emails. And the screenshots. And the commit IDs. I didn't know why, exactly. Just that something in my gut whispered, this is bigger than it looks. The next day, I brought it up in the weekly dev sync. Liam cut me off before I finished. We're not productizing paranoia, Jade. If there's an actual exploit, let security handle it. Heads nodded. People laughed. And just like that, it was a non-issue. But I kept the files. And I started a folder on my personal drive. I named it warnings_ignored. Zip. Chapter 2: Document everything. I stopped talking and started saving. Not just bug reports. Everything. Screenshots. Meeting recaps. Slack threads that vanished too quickly. Liam's brush-offs. The way 2 different Jira tickets I submitted somehow got merged, then quietly closed. I created a private Notion page called Red Flags and logged every interaction with a timestamp. The bypass bug was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, I noticed a second issue tied to user roles and access permissions in our client-facing analytics tool. A user with expired credentials could still view sensitive data for up to 90 seconds post-logout. It wasn't just a glitch, it was a compliance risk. I submitted the ticket. Attached the logs. Wrote the alert case clearly, without dramatics. This time, I CC'd security ops. That's when the Slack messages started changing. Liam pinged me privately. Hey, next time maybe run those types of flags by me first? We don't want to make it seem like there's a larger issue brewing. I stared at the message for a long time. Make it seem? It was a larger issue. Then came the message from Priya in HR. Hi Jade, just checking in, heard there's been some communication friction on the team. Would love to schedule a quick chat if you're free next week? Communication friction. I hadn't raised my voice. Hadn't skipped protocol. All I'd done was log the truth. But in places like this, truth is abrasive. I replied professionally. Set a time. And then I updated my Notion log. Date, May 18th. Issue, data access delay/permissions decay. Response, downplayed. Retaliation pattern, HR flag phrased as supportive check-in after technical escalation. I didn't say anything out loud. But inside, something clicked into place. They weren't going to listen. So I was going to make it impossible for them to forget. Chapter 3, Friendly Fire. At first, it was just a shift in tone. The kind of thing you feel before you can prove. A strange stillness in the air when you enter a room. The way conversations wrap themselves up the moment you approach, like closing a laptop mid-thought. I told myself it was nothing. That I was imagining it. But then Maya stopped looking me in the eye. We used to eat lunch together, at least twice a week. It wasn't formal, it just was. Quiet companionship, gossip about leadership, harmless jokes about QA hell. Then suddenly, she was always about to hop on a call. Always packing up just as I was heating my leftovers. Ben was more subtle. He still said hi, still nodded in meetings. But he no longer commented on my pull requests. Not once. Not even a thumbs up. The week after I'd flagged the second permissions issue, I noticed I hadn't been included on 2 team threads I'd normally be pulled into automatically. The calendar invite for our roadmap preview had been sent to everyone except me. I only found out when Liam mentioned it in passing, mid-conversation, like I'd already been briefed. That afternoon, I hovered near the snack bar, half listening while 2 devs laughed at something on Ben's laptop. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but then I heard it. QA says we're one false login away from a national emergency, one of them snorted. The other one grinned. She's not QA. She's a whistleblower with a Jira addiction. They didn't notice me standing there. But Maya did. She glanced up, met my eyes, and said nothing. That was the moment I stopped pretending. Later that evening, as I stared at my ceiling fan spinning in slow, uneven circles, I realized something sickening. They weren't mocking the bugs I'd found. They were mocking me. The girl who wouldn't let it go. The one who kept pushing. The one who wouldn't play ball. I opened my laptop and went back into Slack. Scrolled through team channels. Looked closer. That's when I found it, a private invite-only channel called #quality_memes. I wasn't in it. But the existence was logged. I didn't cry. I took screenshots. I added everything to my folder. And then I sat very still, letting the silence settle around me like armor. If they wanted to pretend I was paranoid, fine. But they weren't the only ones collecting receipts. Chapter 4, Performance Review. The meeting invite hit my inbox on a Tuesday afternoon. Subject, mid-cycle feedback 1:1 with Liam. No context. No agenda. Just a casual calendar placeholder, like we were grabbing coffee and not documenting the slow undoing of a career. I wore a blazer to that meeting, not because I needed to, but because I wanted the armor. I curled my hair that morning, added concealer beneath my eyes. If they were going to try to reframe me, they'd have to work around a very put-together version of me. Liam smiled when I walked in. Not warm. Not hostile. Just flat. The kind of smile people use when they've already made up their minds. He got right to it. We've been reviewing feedback across teams, he said, tapping a pen against the corner of his notepad. And we've noticed some patterns in your interactions. I blinked. Patterns? He nodded. A few folks have mentioned difficulty collaborating. That conversations with you sometimes feel adversarial. Because I've raised system concerns? Because of the tone of those concerns, he said smoothly. You tend to escalate quickly. There's a perception that you're not a team player. That word again, perception. The golden shield of every bad manager in the corporate world. You can't disprove it, because it's not about facts. It's about feelings. About how your presence makes them feel. I took a slow breath. Can you point to anything specific? There's not a single incident, he said. Just a cumulative sense that you're difficult to work with. That you push too hard. I wanted to laugh. or scream. Or both. Instead, I folded my hands and leaned back. So to be clear, raising issues that could result in a security breach is now considered poor collaboration? Liam shifted in his seat. No one's punishing you for speaking up. But you have to understand how tone and timing affect team morale. There it was. Not a warning. A paper trail. They were building a narrative. One Slack comment at a time. One missed invite. One vague HR chat. Now, a mid-cycle review. If I let them, this would become the file they pulled 6 months from now when they regrettably let me go. But I wouldn't let them. I kept my voice calm. My face neutral. I'd like to formally respond to whatever notes are being taken from this conversation. In writing. Liam hesitated. Of course. If that makes you feel better. I stood. It does. I didn't go back to my desk. I went outside, stood in the parking garage, and opened my phone. I dictated a memo to myself, word for word. What he said. How he said it. His phrasing. His body language. The deflection. The phrase team morale. I saved it to my cloud folder. Then I emailed my attorney and wrote one line. It's starting. Chapter 6, Don't Be the Hero. He waited until we were alone. It was after the quarterly town hall, one of those performative affairs with stale coffee, buzzwords on slides, and execs clapping for themselves. I had slipped out early, weaving through the back corridor to avoid the hallway crowd, when I heard someone call my name. Jade. I turned. Eli Monahan. VP of Engineering. Crisp button-down. Polished shoes. That management smile that never quite reaches the eyes. He walked toward me casually, like we were peers, like we'd ever had more than 3 polite conversations in passing. You got a minute? I nodded, but didn't speak. I already knew what this was. He leaned against the wall like we were 2 old friends catching up after the meeting. I wanted to say, I've been following your work. You're sharp. Precise. People notice. I waited. But, he added, you're standing out for the wrong reasons lately. There it was. I crossed my arms. Because I reported things that needed fixing? Because you're pushing too hard. He said it kindly. Almost gently. Look, this place isn't perfect. None of them are. But you have to know when to let things go. That's not giving in. It's being strategic. I almost laughed. Let me guess, I said. You're here to give me advice. From one survivor to another. He smiled like I'd proven his point. Exactly. You're too smart to let one bug become your legacy. It's not one bug. Doesn't matter. The narrative's already writing itself. You know how it goes, troublemaker, bad attitude, high risk. People don't look deeper. They just read the headline. I let the silence stretch. Then I tilted my head. That why you haven't replied to my security escalation from last quarter? His eyes flicked. Just for a second. Then he smiled again. I'm just saying, don't be the hero. Heroes don't last long in places like this. He pushed off the wall and walked away like he hadn't just issued a warning wrapped in a compliment. But I wasn't rattled. Because he was right about one thing, I was strategic. And what he didn't know was that my narrative was already being written, too. Not in Slack. Not in whispers. But in legal filings. And I wasn't the one who'd regret it. Chapter 7, The Leak. It broke on a Tuesday. Not in some dramatic, cinematic explosion, just a quiet LinkedIn post that spiraled faster than anyone in leadership could control. A former client, frustrated and bold, shared a screen recording showing a permissions exploit on the company's flagship analytics tool. One click, a refresh, and he had access to internal user data he shouldn't have been able to see. Real names. Contact history. Revenue figures. The post was short. Calm. Just a caption that read, "Been trying to get this addressed for months." No response. Here you go. It had 18,000 views before noon. 52,000 by the end of the day. A few tech reporters picked it up. Then some InfoSec Twitter accounts. Then, chaos. I sat in the back of the all-hands the next morning, camera off, mute on, watching as leadership scrambled to patch the fallout. Liam gave a panicked breakdown of remediation timelines. Legal said there'd be a statement. Priya from HR reminded everyone to limit external commentary. And Eli? Eli wasn't there. Too busy doing damage control behind closed doors. No one mentioned the fact that I'd flagged that exact flaw, down to the session timeout discrepancy, for months earlier. No one said my name. But I saw the glances. Heard the silence. Felt the shift. Slack was quieter. Tighter. Messages started disappearing faster. Threads suddenly archived. Jira tickets marked resolved with no explanation. A blanket of controlled panic had settled over everything, and they were moving fast, not to fix the problem, but to erase the trail. Too late. I didn't speak up. Didn't gloat. Didn't post. Didn't "I told you so" anyone. Instead, I logged the timeline. Captured statements. Took a screen cap of the Slack message where someone joked, "We should just blame Jade. She sees ghosts anyway." The ghost was real now. And it was angry. Chapter 8, They Blame Her. It didn't take them long to turn the story. By Friday morning, I was pulled into a containment conversation with Liam and a representative from HR I'd never met before, someone new, all smiles and soft landing language. "We just want to clarify a few things," she said, nodding like we were chatting about PTO, not a public scandal. The meeting was scheduled last minute, outside our normal cadence. No agenda. No context. Just a friendly check-in that smelled like liability management. Liam opened with the usual preamble. "This isn't disciplinary, just a chance to walk through recent events." Translation. "We don't want to put anything in writing, yet." They asked if I'd seen the video. I said yes. They asked if I'd ever shared information with external parties. I said no. They asked if I'd ever flagged similar issues internally. I smiled. Frequently. HR blinked. Liam didn't look at me. They said there were concerns that some of my earlier security reports may have created unnecessary panic. That I'd misrepresented system status in ways that undermined leadership credibility. It was almost impressive, the speed with which they flipped my warnings into weapons. Like they'd been practicing the story all week. "We're going to temporarily reassign your duties," HR said. "Just until this stabilizes." Not a suspension. Not on paper. Just enough of a pullback to isolate me. To buy time. To frame it all as precaution, not punishment. I nodded. I said thank you. I didn't fight it. Because while they were busy rewriting their side of the story, my attorney had already filed the initial complaint. Civil suit. Retaliation. Hostile work environment. Negligence. We hadn't gone public. Not yet. But the complaint had teeth. And evidence. And timestamps. And a timeline that aligned perfectly with the bug I'd raised, the one they tried to bury. They thought they were sidelining me. What they didn't realize was that I was just giving them enough rope. and they were already halfway through the knot. Chapter 9, The Filing. It went live at 9:42 a.m. on a Monday. I know because I watched it happen, sitting on my couch, laptop open, coffee untouched. Marissa had submitted the paperwork the week prior, but today was the official filing. Public. Searchable. Real. Jade Thomas vs. Nexera Technologies, Incorporated. Alleging retaliation, defamation, gender-based disparate treatment, constructive discharge, gross negligence regarding data security. By 11 o'clock, internal Slack channels were already buzzing. Someone posted the link. Someone else deleted it. But not before it was screenshotted, copied into group texts, email threads, and a few quiet DMs that made their way to me with messages like, "You really did it. Holy sh*t. They're not gonna survive this." By 3 p.m., 2 journalists had reached out to Marissa. She declined to comment, for now, but we both knew it wouldn't stay quiet long. This was a software firm that bragged about compliance. That sold trust as a service. And now they were being sued by their own employee, the one who had warned them. Back at the office, Liam sent out a company-wide memo. "We are aware of certain allegations recently filed and want to reassure our team that these claims do not reflect the values or integrity of Nexera Technologies." No one believed that. Especially not after the filing included actual Slack messages, internal Jira edits, and evidence that they had deleted specific issue reports after the exploit became public. Marissa called later that evening. "They're going to dig in. Say you were unstable, difficult, emotionally reactive." I nodded. "I've got timestamps for every escalation. Audio recordings of my check-ins. Metadata from every edit they made to my tickets." She laughed. "Good. Let them try." I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet settle. For the first time in months, it wasn't a weight. It was momentum. And they couldn't stop it now. Chapter 10, Discovery. You can tell a lot about a company by how they behave during discovery. Some firms hand over documents with mechanical efficiency, redacted, filtered, safe. Others try to play smart. Try to hide things in plain sight. Hope the mess is too dense to untangle. Nexera tried both. They turned over thousands of files, Slack archives, performance notes, Jira logs, even my own email threads, as if I'd forgotten what I wrote. But they didn't realize how organized I'd been. How precise. They also didn't realize what else I had. When Marissa and her team deposed Liam, he barely made it past the first 30 minutes before he contradicted his own email trail. First, he said he didn't recall my reports. Then, he said he'd investigated thoroughly. Then, when presented with a Jira ticket he'd closed under a false resolution label, he said, "That doesn't look familiar." Marissa smiled politely. "But your name's on the commit log." There was silence on the record. We got access to internal channels I hadn't known existed. One, called #ops_warm, had 3 weeks' worth of messages between Liam, Eli, and a few senior engineers. In them, they speculated about how to contain the exploit story, and me. I wasn't named directly, but the language was clear. She's gonna make this bigger than it is. Get ahead of it. Start pulling her from visible features. Let her walk if she wants, less liability that way. There was even a meme in there. A second one. This time, it used the company's branded NDA logo, slapped across a photo of a woman shouting into the void. Caption: "When you report a bug but no one asked." It was posted by Ben. Time-stamped. Preserved. And now, submitted into evidence. We also found that my HR file had been edited post-filing, retroactively marked with interpersonal friction and collaboration concerns that hadn't appeared before. The changes were subtle. But Marissa's forensic team spotted them immediately. The metadata didn't lie. They weren't just trying to bury my warnings. They were rewriting history. And that was the thing about facts. You could bend them. You could delay them. But once they made it under oath, they became truth. Chapter 11, Courtroom Playback. The room was colder than I expected. Not emotionally, physically. Industrial carpeting. Beige walls. That sharp, overconditioned air that made it feel more like a dentist's office than a courtroom. I sat across from them. Liam. Eli. The new HR director, who wouldn't look me in the eye. They had lawyers. Suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Slick, rehearsed tones. But none of them could control what came next. The judge gave a nod. Marissa stood and gestured to the screen behind her. "Let's talk about tone," she said. Then she hit play. It was a Slack screen recording, scrolled slowly, deliberately. Liam's words lit up first. "Jade's too aggressive with her QA flags. Starting to feel like a liability." Then, "Can someone sanitize her Jira trail? She's flooding it again." Then came the meme. Not the first one, the second. The one they tried to delete from #ops_Warum. Ben's lawyer objected. The judge waved it off. Overruled. And then, the punchline. The voice recording. I hadn't known Marissa had cleaned it up so clearly. But there it was. A captured conversation between Liam and the lead PM where he muttered, "We just need to bury her in enough noise. She'll crack or leave. Either way, it solves itself." It played loud in that room. Louder than the air conditioner. Louder than the defense. When it ended, no one spoke. Marissa waited. Then she turned to me on the stand. "Jade, what was your role at the time?" I answered clearly. Calmly. "Senior QA Automation Lead. Security Response Liaison. Cross-functional test design. And did you flag the exact vulnerability that triggered the client data breach?" "Yes. Twice. On record." "And did anyone act on that?" I looked straight at Liam. "No. They ignored me." There were more questions after that. More documents. More contradictions. The defense tried to poke holes in my personality, tried to paint me as combative, difficult, dramatic. But by then, the damage was done. Their words weren't coming from me anymore. They were on tape. On screen. Time-stamped and undeniable. And I wasn't the one under scrutiny. They were. Chapter 12, The Verdict. They settled. Not with grace. Not with apology. With silence. After 3 days of testimony and a week of damage control, Nexra's legal team requested a private meeting. It wasn't sudden. We'd felt it coming, the quiet shift in posture, the way Eli stopped showing up in person, how HR stopped submitting rebuttals and started asking for clarification. They wanted out. Quietly. Cleanly. They offered a number, high. Then higher. Then high enough that Marissa raised one eyebrow and said, "I think they're scared of what's still in discovery." They were. And they should have been. The agreement included a formal admission of misconduct. A sealed letter of apology, not just to me, but to the 2 other employees who came forward privately during the hearing. One in dev. One in product. Both women. Both silenced. The court transcript became public record. The meme screenshots? Used in a Harvard ethics lecture 6 months later. Liam resigned. So did Eli. The HR director was reassigned, then quietly removed. The company's valuation dropped 14% by the end of the quarter. But none of that was what mattered most to me. What mattered was that when I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt real, validated, visible, and whole. Epilogue: they should have listened. The new office is smaller. No glass walls. No espresso bar. Just good people and a standing desk that doesn't jam every other Tuesday. My first day, they handed me a laptop and said, "Take your time, on board how you like." No forced bonding. No false smiles. Just trust. A few months after the case closed, I got a LinkedIn message from a junior dev I'd never met. She said she'd read the court transcript. That it gave her language she hadn't had before. She'd flagged an accessibility flaw to her lead. He tried to brush her off. She stood her ground. She said, "I'd rather speak up than settle down." That was all she needed. I didn't reply. Not right away. I just sat with it for a moment, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed. They called me difficult. Turns out I was just early.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.